Hey guys, it's JUBEI here. So today they have announced the new character JUBEI, who is a legendary hero who will be coming out on Friday. So let's take a look at his skills together. So you can see that his faction is Sword Harbor Guards and his attack class and Ritma. So looking at the Sword Harbor Guards faction, you can see that there actually isn't very many strong damage dealers. So we do have good damage dealer supporters, which it comes in the form of Oliver for bleed teams, Rista for direct damage teams, Marvella for HP burn teams, and Beatrix, which is just good in general. But in terms of actual damage dealers, we only really have Dornot Rebelli as the main option, and he isn't that good of a damage dealer himself. He's probably, he's still decent, but he's not at the top tier damage dealer like many of the newer characters are. So it is nice to see that they are implementing a proper damage dealer for this Sword Harbor Guards faction. So let's see his basic attack, and deals 2 stages of 180% attack internal injury damage each to a single enemy, and the second stage of damage guarantees to inflict severe wound on the target for 2 turns. So this is a pretty straightforward basic attack, internal injury damage, and severe wound is nice for the boss for sure, for just as a status to inflict enemies for sure. So next is Special 2. Sword Fighting. Remove all buffs from the main target and inflicts Mastery Rest down on them for 2 turns. Afterward, deals 280% attack internal injury damage to all enemies. So actually there's very little text. It's quite surprising. Usually for these newer characters, there's a whole bunch of text for their skills, and this once again is very straightforward. So removes all buffs from the main target is really nice to have. I can see this being really strong for PvP content. For PvE, it's kind of useful, but not as important, I feel. And one thing which I like is it has this in Mastery Rest down too. So this is actually a pretty uncommon debuff that characters have. So I believe there's only actually one other character which has this effect, which is Bobo N. So you can see that Bobo N on her exclusive one does do a Mastery Rest down too as well. And the only other character which does any form of Mastery Rest reduction is Irato with her Magic Sound debuff. So if we take a look at Magic Sound over here, you can see each layer of this Magic Sound debuff reduces Mastery Rest as well. So this is actually a really uncommon debuff that characters have to inflict on enemies, so very nice to have. Mastery Rest down is going to be very useful. And there is also a niche case for Boss Holder in Demon Conquest. I know a lot of newer players are stuck at that boss, and that's part of the reason is because Boss Holder has 200% Mastery Rest and 200% Tenacity, and this debuff will be very useful for that. So besides that, just internal injury on all enemies. And next, let's see his passive. So after enemies excluding bosses deal damage by launching basic attacks or casting skills, steal 20% mastery from them, caps at 20% of self-initial mastery, and self can only gain 25% of the stolen mastery for 2 turns. So this is another attribute steal character, which is nice, which means that potentially when we read the rest of his kit, if we feel that it's appropriate, he can fit into a team which a PvP team with Kalana, who obviously is right now the core of attribute steal teams. And so far, his kit isn't particularly PvP skewed besides the removes all buffs that we've seen so far, but let's continue reading and see if there's anything interesting. As for the Mastery Steal itself, stealing 20% mastery is really nice. We also have a lot of other characters which do reduce enemy mastery, so one notable one is Giselle. And if you've ever faced Giselle, you know that it's extremely annoying to face because Giselle's kit as a whole just reduces the damage your team does so significantly, and this effect will make it even more annoying. So this is going to be really strong in PvP content. Next, at the beginning of each wave, inflicts Moon Shadow on the enemy with the highest initial attack. So Moon Shadow is considered taunt, and targets with Moon Shadow cannot gain taunt. So this is just a unique effect, which means it cannot be cleansed, so it'll be one of those purple buffs. And yeah, I can see this being kind of useful. Chances are if you use this in PvP, you'll be facing teams with Marie, and usually Marie is the character with the highest attack. And that means Marie will be taunted, which is a good thing because usually you do want to try and focus down the Marie first. And if Marie dies on an enemy's team, usually they're gonna lose. So yeah, pretty nice effect. And next we have this special force. So we have Shrinkage Reel, deals 6 stages of damage to a single enemy. Each stage deals 100% attack internal injury damage, and additionally inflicts 10% times the target's total shield value internal injury damage. Okay, so single target damage, which is kind of interesting. So I guess he might be more of a boss killer, but let's see what the rest of his effects do. Each stage of the additional damage, so I believe that's referring to just this shield damage. Ignore shield and cannot exceed 100% of self-attack. So, this is interesting. So there are 6 stages, and each stage does this base 100% attack internal injury damage, and each stage also does this percentage of enemy shield value damage. So even though the damage that each stage does scales off the enemy's shield, the damage itself ignores shield, and this is really good against like teams with Sun Wukong or Nikolith. So, and those shields are really annoying to get past, so this will be very useful for PvP. And cannot exceed 100% of self-attack, so yeah, attack seems to be the main stat that you need on this character. Meanwhile, when 1 to 4 allies with the internal injury tag are deployed besides himself, increase the damage dealt by this skill to boss by up to 300%. So yeah, this reminds me of, well, there are several heroes which have damage increases to boss. So one would be, I believe, Indra at exclusive 2, if we take a look. Yeah, so over here you can see that his damage is increased to 300%. And there are a few other characters like that. I think Sotra is another one with her Resonance skill 2, so you can see that, yeah, it also does 300% damage to bosses. So I have no doubt that this skill, if you use it in an internal injury team, is going to do a whole bunch of damage. But right now, thinking about the internal injury team, I'm not really sure who JUBEI will replace, because we have Murongjing, who's pretty core to the team for survivability. We have Dianmu Indra, who, at least my first impressions right now, is not going to be replaced by this guy. And then we have maybe like a Shaorin and Faxian, so maybe Shaorin gets replaced or Faxian, I'm not really sure. But this character so far doesn't do deep internal injury 2, which is an important buff that we need from either Shaorin or Faxian, so I'm not sure where he slots into the team. Anyway, let's read his exclusives. So that at exclusive 1, JUBEI gains 1 layer of Soul of Sword under the following circumstances. 1 at the end of anyone's turn, which includes enemies, and 2 when an ally steals attributes from enemies, and this effect can only be triggered once in a turn. When Soul of Sword is stacked to 10 layers, JUBEI casts Sword Fighting to pursue an attack 1, which also steals 15% turn meter from each enemy. So Sword Fighting is his special 2, which also removes all the buffs from the main target. And this looks pretty strong. So you will have a team-wide 15% turn meter steal, not just reduction steal, which means that JUBEI is going to be taking a lot of turns, because this Soul of Sword effect is actually really easy to stack up, as you can see again, at the end of anyone's turn, including enemies, and not only that, whenever an ally steals attributes. So he's going to be able to pursue an attack using this sword fighting function really often, which not only removes all buffs from one of the targets, but also steals turn meter, which means the enemy is not going to be able to take many turns. So this looks really strong for PvP. At exclusive 2, at the beginning of each wave and self-turns, JUBEI gains Evil Purge, and he is immune to control effects once. So for every 2 allies with the attribute Steel Tag deployed, excluding self, he will gain 1 extra attempt to be immune to control effects. This actually doesn't seem that strong to me. So when he has 5 allies, he does have 3 instances to be immune to control effects, but like I said, this character is someone who you want to build a lot of attack from, and I'm guessing that if you when we do eventually have an attribute steal team, this is the character you also want to have the highest attack on. And what that means is when you run him with Kalana, you can see that at, I think it's Kalana's exclusive tree, where there are 5 allies with the attribute steal tag deployed, both herself and the ally with initial attack, which presumably will be JUBEI, will be immune to all control effects anyway. So it feels to me that this actually isn't that important, because if you pair JUBEI with Kalana and you do build an attribute steal team, then he's going to be immune to control effects anyway. So unless something changes and there's another character you want to focus as your damage dealer, then I feel like this part of his skill isn't very relevant. But of course, I mean, in situations where maybe you don't have 5 attributes characters in the team, or you don't have Kalana, then of course this is a nice to have. But I have the suspicion that eventually, if we have an attribute steal team in PvP and we do have 5 attribute steal characters, I feel like this isn't going to be very relevant. Anyway, we have this Shrinkage Reel, ignores damage resistance, and self gains Heart of Sword, increasing attack by 5%, up to 20 layers after casting Shrinkage Reel each time. So Shrinkage Reel is his special 4, and this is going to be really good for a lot of PvP matchups. So ignoring damage res is really significant, and once again when we reach a point where we do have attribute steal team, Kalana is going to have insane damage resistance over here. So being able to ignore it is going to be a very big factor when it comes to mirror matchups between Kalana attribute steal teams. And when self gains the Heart of Sword and increasing his attack, so this is up to 100%, he's going to do a lot more damage. So yeah, this second part of the exclusive 2 I think is very important. It's going to allow him to actually kill enemies very, very well. So not only does he have the ignore damage resistance, but once again he does have this skill which ignores shield. So a very strong special 4, even though it's single target, it's going to do a whole bunch of damage. And lastly, for exclusive 3, for every 1 ally with the internal injury tag deployed, increases all allies' internal injury damage dealt by 6%. Okay, this is an insanely strong buff. So when you have 5 internal injury heroes, well, in dedicated internal injury content, so that would be things like 7 Sages of Luli, for instance, you are going to increase your internal injury damage by up to 30%. Very, very significant boost. And if there is an enemy with Moon Shadow, so I think this is a unique buff. Moon Shadow. Okay, Moon Shadow is the buff which gives an enemy taunt. So if there's an enemy with Moon Shadow, JUBEI casts Wind Slash to pursue attack them once, and Wind Slash is the basic attack. To pursue attack them once when self turn starts and refreshes the cooldown or Shrinkage Rule, this is the special 4. So let's just check again how this Moon Shadow is activated. And it's just at the beginning of each wave. Okay, so I don't believe there's anywhere else which triggers it. So what this basically means is, basically, as long as the character which has been given this at the start of the wave is alive, then he's going to pursue an attack every single time his turn starts, and he will also be able to just use his special 4 every single time. Then once the enemy with Moon Shadow is killed, JUBEI casts Sword Fighting to pursue and attack the remaining enemies once. Okay, so this exclusive tree, and in fact most of his kit, seems to revolve around isolating one singular enemy, which in most cases will be the enemy with the highest attack, and he casts Moon Shadow on. And whichever character gets taunted, JUBEI is just going to deal a lot of damage to them. So once again, high damage, single target damage, and ignore shield. And then alongside this exclusive tree, every single time JUBEI takes a turn, he will just be able to use this his special 4 non-stop, and also pursue and attack them once with his basic attack. So yeah, a very strong character it seems, PvP wise, and for PvE. So for PvE, I think he will shine in internal injury teams, mainly because of this, and he does do a lot of damage to bosses as well. And for PvP, I can see a lot of potential with Kalana, and being able to like I mentioned, just deal a lot of damage to a singular target, of which would be the highest attack enemy on the opposing team. So yeah, a pretty interesting character. He kind of reminds me of Donald Rebelli in the sense that Donald Rebelli is a character who also wants to kind of isolate one specific character and just keep attacking that one character until it dies. Of course, like, you know, JUBEI doesn't have the dual attack that Donald Rebelli does, but the concept seems very similar to me. So yeah, I think he's going to be a really strong character. There's a lot of potential PvP wise, especially as new attribute steal characters come out. So we may eventually see a team where JUBEI is used with Kalana, and potentially it could be used with Kratos as well. I know Kratos isn't actually very strong right now, and he's a very slow character in terms of for him to get stacks and start dealing damage. But Kratos has a lot of stuff that JUBEI wants. He's both a attribute steal character and also an internal injury character, so there may be some synergy there as well. Now lastly, and perhaps most importantly, should you summon for him? And my answer is going to be no. First of all, to me, he doesn't seem as strong as Kalana, who is currently in the Miracle Pool until this Friday. And secondly, even though I think he's still going to be good, undoubtedly, we are expecting a limited time hero to release soon. As I've mentioned before, you can base the limited time hero release from the Withering Coast buff duration, so you can take this as an estimate for when the next limited time hero will come out, and I'm quite certain that it will be soon. So yeah, so I would recommend you just save your miracles. If you want JUBEI, just wait until he comes for a rerun or something in a different banner, and then you can get him then. For now, I mean, looking at the trend of how strong these regular legendary heroes are, I am very confident that the limited time hero which is coming soon will be insanely strong, and you don't want to miss that. So that's all we have for today. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.